Delete everything you have ever built for us. I'm not in tech support. In fact, none of my job descriptions ever included anything remotely resembling tech support, yet life finds a way. As a longtime night shift worker who often hung out with the local IT folks and demonstrated Tier 1 support skills, looking up error messages, and even Tier 2 willingness and ability to learn and improve, I was promoted to an honorary tech support role. It was a win-win-win-lose scenario for the guys, as they could chill at home while on call. In the meantime, I resolved low-level on-site issues and had something interesting or at least different to do, in addition to my boring desk jockey job. The following story is not related to any of the above. Plugging VGA cables into desk stations to fix broken computers is not a story, it's business as usual. A few companies later, when the buzzwords business intelligence, data analysis, data-driven decisions, and the like started to pop up on the technology HR bingo cards, I was already involved in these things in my current workplace. As usual, my job description had nothing to do with it, but I had to manually create a lot of reports and work with a lot of data. I'm as lazy as they come. If I have to do the same task twice, I'm going to spend an unreasonable amount of time trying to automate it. The result of my laziness was a Power BI dashboard hosted on SharePoint. Behind the scenes and the shiny charts, there was a giant cluster of code as I had to solve issues with the tools I had access to. Python calling SAP GUI scripts to run custom queries, then reading and transforming the data from the resulting exported Excel files just to spit it out again as a new and improved spreadsheet. PowerShell to manage SharePoint, then some Auto Hotkey and Power Automate to maximize the chaos. It had a lot of moving parts. I tried to do way too much. It was a horrible mess, but I tried to keep it as organized as possible, stacking code on GitHub and tracking well-written documentation for everything. All the other best practices as well. My team's standard reporting tasks, which were taking usually an entire week at the end of each month's events, were down to a few hours, which in theory could have been less if I had trusted myself. But I always had the final result before releasing it for use. So, in addition to my standard role, which I performed above expectations according to my annual reviews, I was the local BI developer, data analyst, and ad hoc tech support. At every salary increase cycle, I always had to ask for a salary at the top of the range of the role which I had on paper, citing the above reasons. The company always fought tooth and nail, and it was always a painful and a bit humiliating experience. Unfortunately, after a few years, they decided that since I had built those solutions, they didn't need me anymore. They thought they could just hire someone to maintain it. So I was fired. According to my contract, this would mean I was still employed for another 60 days. I made sure to double-check everything, rewrite some of the documentation to be clearer, refactor the code, especially my early stuff. I made backups on my team's OneDrive and fixed as many issues as I could. In short, I tried to make sure that everything went smoothly when my replacement took over. By the time my notice period was up, they still couldn't find anyone as they'd been advertising a wonderful 3-in-1 package. Yep. My successor was supposed to do everything I was doing. My last day was at the end of the month, and I pushed out one more update under the watchful eye of my supervisor. As soon as they saw that everything was updated, security came in and my boss told me to delete everything from GitHub as it was an external site and a security risk. I tried to explain that it was tied to my corporate email and it would be best to keep it alive and transfer ownership to my successor. They wouldn't budge and told me to delete it. Okay then, let's nuke it from orbit. I told them there was a local copy on my work laptop and also on OneDrive, not in my private folder. They said they will take care of it. Apparently, that meant a deep clean of my laptop without retaining any of the data. So, the only remaining copy was in my former team's shared OneDrive folder. A month passed, and my former boss called me asking for help. They still haven't found a replacement, unsurprisingly, not wanting to burn any bridges, and because I'm an exploitable idiot, I told them, "Sure, I'll help. Toss in a steak dinner voucher for 2 at a local mid-range restaurant, and I'll help." They were dragging their feet, despite the fact that I was significantly lower in value than what the contractor rate would have been, and I knew they could expense it anyway. After a day or two, they gave in. I hopped on my bike, signed an NDA, got a laptop, and asked a team member to add me to the team's channel so I can start working. Long live Python MPIP installer requirements. Or so I thought. As I started to poke around on OneDrive, I couldn't find my backup folder. After a while, I went to ask my former boss where they moved it, as I couldn't find it anywhere. "Oh, we deleted them. They didn't seem important. There were only a couple of files, though. I'm sure you can easily do it again." Those few files were the result of hundreds of hours of experimentation trying to figure out how the various systems worked together. Just the pandas part was a couple hundred lines of unpacking data, and without documentation, there was literally zero chance of recreating it in a short amount of time. Can't you just restore from that online hub thing? Not really, as you specifically asked me to delete it despite my protests. I left without getting my steak dinner. A few days later, they called me again asking me how much would it cost to make a brand new dashboard. Apparently, some corporate bigwigs overseas were using it for their C-level PowerPoint meetings. Remember, it included global data, and they weren't very pleased that the fancy charts were gone. I may or may not have found a relatively recent local version of the Git repo on my Raspberry, which I may or may not have used to do some of the number crunching, as my old corporate laptop could barely handle anything. I may or may not have forgotten to mention this obvious security breach, and billed out my hours, as if I've been creating everything from scratch.